Hello, everyone. Welcome back to your Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics subject. This is still your instructor, Mr. Trip Anthony A. Ramos, and for this session, we will be talking about the cultural, social, and political change. So this would be our last topic for our semester. So let's go ahead and discuss this one. Okay, if we're talking about social change, this would actually refer to the significant modification or alteration in the lifestyle of a society that includes culture. So as we all know, there is what we call as the status quo or the current standing. In every culture, in every society, or in every community, there are things that are actually prevalent as of the moment. So say for example, in your community, no, or sa limbawa sa ating barangay, no, meron tayong mga nakaugalian na it is actually acceptable towards our society. Say for example, ang acceptable ngayon ay yung no, pagbati ng hindi gamit ang pag-handshake. Dati-rate, ang status quo ay kailangan mo makipagkamay, no, kung sakaling gusto mo makipagkapwa-tao. Pero as of the moment, since there is a pandemic, definitely hindi ka tanggap-tanggap, no, according to our status quo, ang mag-shake hands, no? Kaya nga ang gobyerno natin hinihikayat ang mga tao that you will greet someone, no, through other gestures rather than touching them, no? So that would actually be a status quo. If we're talking about social change, take note that there should be a significant modification, no? Kung ito halimbawa yung current situation, no, ang situation natin ay hindi tayo nakapag hawak kamay no, sa ibang tao, if there is a significant modification on that, no, say for example, pwede basta ano lang, no, dampi lang, no? Actually, that's a modification already, a significant one. So definitely that can actually refer to social change. Also, social change may mean any significant shift or modification in the lifestyle of the society that affects the major portion of the population that brings about pattern of behavior. So take note that in order for us to consider that this is a significant shift or modification, this modification should actually affect the major portion of the population. Siyempre nga naman, no, paano mo tatawagin na significant ito kung kakaunti lang yung mga tao nakaranas ng pagbabago rito, no? So definitely, in order for you to say that a concept is a social change, this should actually affect the major portion of your population. Okay? And not only that, not only affecting, but there should also be a change when it comes to their pattern of behavior. Okay? So lastly, social change may also be brought about by cultural, religious, economic, scientific, or technological forces in which we will be discussing later. All right. So let's go ahead now and talk about cultural and political change. So if we're talking about cultural change, of course, this would refer to changes made in cultural elements, both material and non-material. So just like what we were able to discuss in the previous quarter, definitely culture would actually have the material and non-material concepts. So let me give you an example. So for the material ones, definitely, no, kung meron limbawang pagbabago sa struktura, no, sa arkitektura, definitely that would be about material culture, no? Say for example naman, ito ay pinag-uusapan natin ay konsepto, ideya, no, pananaw, definitely they can be referred to as non-material culture. And if there are significant changes to those cultural concepts, there is what we call cultural change. Next, we also have what we call as the political change. And political change happens when there is a significant disruption in a government that leads to new or modified leadership or policies. Now, let me give you an example. Before the term of the late President Corazon Aquino, definitely hindi ganito ang ating ang ating gobyerno. Meron dating makapangyarihan dati ang presidente, kagaya ng nag-discuss sa inyong Philippine Politics and Governance. That if you are actually the president, makapangyarihan ka because you can exercise both executive and legislative powers, no? Pero if we're talking about ngayon, no, things change when President Corazon Aquino assumed the office and changed the constitution in which binalik ang demokrasya, nagkaroon ng separation of powers, nagkaroon ng checks and balances in which ang trabaho ng presidente ay purely executive. Ang legislative ay vested sa, of course, the legislative department, which is actually being headed by the House Speaker and also the Senate President. And of course, hindi niya rin pwede pakialaman ang judicial process because judicial power is vested under the judicial department. And that is actually being superheaded by, of course, none other than the Chief Justice. All right. So if there is a significant disruption, again, Say for example, if matuloy yung plano na federalismo ng current president, definitely that would actually be a political change because there would be a significant disruption. Lahat ng may kinalaman sa bureaucracia, definitely ito ay maapektuhan. Thus, this can be considered as a political change. Now, just like what I've mentioned earlier, there are different causes of social change, and let's discuss this one by one. So the first one would actually be technology. And according to Thomas Friedman, which is an American political commentator and author, technology is the driving force behind globalization. Of course, no, magkakaroon ba ng globalization without technology? I don't think so, no? Paano ba nakokonekta ang mga tao through globalization? And it is through technology, no? Ngayon pa nga lang, no? Halimbawa, paano natin nalalaman yung mga kultura, no? Paano natin nalalaman yung kultura ng ibang bansa, no? Ngayon nandito tayo sa Pilipinas without going to that country. Of course, we would actually be using our internet. Yeah? So in that sense, definitely we're using technology. So technology, of course, people get connected all over the world through this. No, so say for example, kung dati-rate, let me give you a relevant one. No, so kung dati-rate hindi namin na-contact yung tatay namin, which is actually a worker, no, sa UAE. Ngayon na-contact na namin siya through Facebook and Messenger, and that is actually because of technology. Okay, and I think that is also the same with those persons na malayo sa kanilang mga minamahal sa buhay. Next, technologically advanced countries are on the rise. No, syempre, if we're talking about globalization, no, ito yung paulit-ulit ko na sinasabi sa inyo, we must take advantage of this by actually being technologically advanced. No, paano ka makikipagsabayan sa mga matataas na mga bansa kung hindi mo kayang tapatan yung kanilang teknolohiya? Of course, it would actually be beneficial for our country if we are technologically advanced, since globalization is also on the rise. And lastly, technology contributes a lot to the modernization in the fields of medicine, agriculture, manufacturing, and other industries. No, let me give an example. Yung bakuna, no, kung dati-rate, of course, no, mahirap mag-research para sa mga para sa sagot sa mga pandemya or epidemya. Ngayon, no, hindi ganun katagal compared dati. Why? Because of course, we already have this technology that will help our scientists, no, our doctors to formulate yung mga kailangan natin na mga formula and even yung yung ating mga ingredients na kailangan for vaccines. Ganon din sa agrikultura at saka sa pag-manufacture ng mga iba't ibang produkto. Next, we also have what we call a social institution. So social institutions are established sets of norms and subsystems in a society. Societies are also composed of different sectors, and each sector carries out specific tasks. So alam naman na natin yan. If we're talking about yung mga manggagawa natin, of course, ang kanilang obligasyon, no, ay gumawa, no, ng mga ina-expect from them. Ang gawain ng mga mangingisda, of course, ay mangisda. Ang gawain ng mga magsasaka ay magbigay syempre ng mga pagkain. And of course, all of the sector would actually have different responsibilities in which it will contribute sa normal functioning ng ating society. No? Imagine mo halimbawa, lahat ng tao halimbawa ay manggagawa, walang magsasaka, walang mangingisda. Saan tayo kukuha ng ating mga ng ating mga pagkain? No? Saan tayo kukuha ng ating ulam? And definitely there would actually be disruption sa ating society. That's why it is important that they are actually being supported, each sector. And take note that each change in a single social institution, that would also lead to changes in all other institutions. Third, we also have what we call as the population. Of course, a change in population in the composition of every level in the society would actually lead to social change. No? Paano natin nasabi? Of course, mag-a-adjust lahat ng lipunan kung sakaling overpopulated na ang Pilipinas. No? Ano ba kailangan gawin para mapagkasya yung ating scarce resources? Paano natin mapapakain yung mga tao? So definitely, that would actually be part of social change. And regardless, whether the population increases or decreases, for sure, it has a great impact of all aspects in the society. And take note, no, sabi nga, ulitin ko lang, bumaba man yan or tumaas, ang isa lang ang sigurado, no, ito'y magkakaroon ng malaking impact sa ating komunidad. Fourth, we also have what we call as the environment. So of course, a population change may affect the environment and of your natural resources, just like what I told you earlier. Likewise, a change in the environment will also affect the people in the society. And because of the changes in the population, people will now be using all the natural resources available. Sino bang hindi? No? So definitely, no, kung sakali mo magkaroon ng pagbabago sa population, no, we will strive our best so that we will be able to garner the natural resources that we need. And of course, the way humans interact with the environment and the way members of the population utilize the resources, this would actually aggravate the impact of those natural disasters, lalong-lalo kapag inaabuso natin ang ating environment. And fifth, we also have modernization. This may also be considered as a typical result of a social change. And this would refer to the process of increased differentiation and specialization within a society and primarily around its industry and infrastructure. Okay, so we also have what we call as the sources of cultural, social, and political change. So let's discuss this. First, we have innovation. If we're talking about innovation, it is the use of new techniques to achieve our desired ends. Because all of us, of course, meron tayong kanya-kanyang goals and, of course, aspirations. And this would actually be attainable by using new techniques. It would also, innovation would also refer to changing or creating more effective processes and ideas. And this is the process of translating new idea into something that can create a value. No? So that would be an added value. So second, we also have the cultural diffusion. If we're talking about cultural diffusion, this is the spread of culture, including aspects such as clothing and food from one group to another, and typically as a result of making contact with a new group for the first time. And when one culture begins to adopt elements, so some of those elements are clothing, your food, your religion, your costume, your song, your dance, and among others, of course, cultural diffusion would actually happen. All right. We also have what we call as the acculturation. So this is a process wherein a minority, if we're talking about minority, these are a small group of people, adopts the cultural aspects of the majority or the larger group of people without losing its own traditions and customs. So ano ibig sabihin ng acculturation? You are letting one aspect, no? So say for example, yung cultural aspect ng mas malaking tao ay mapabilang sa iyong kultura without, of course, deleting yung current mong culture. So let me give you an example. So looking back, of course, yung sa K-pop, no? Many Filipinos, Filipino millennials begin already to speak and dress like K-pop idol. I know, no, in one way or another, you have a classmate na nagkaroon ng hilig sa K-pop and at some point ginagaya ito. Pero tinanggal ba niya pagiging Filipino niya? Definitely hindi, no? And that would actually what we call as acculturation, because yung K-pop culture, which is originally from South Korea, ay hinahayaang makapasok sa kanya, no, sa kanyang sistema. Pero hindi niya sinasabi na hindi na ako Filipino. Okay? Fourth, we also have what we call as assimilation. It is a process whereby people of a culture learn to adapt to the ways of the majority culture. There is also a loss of minorities' own culture as more value is given to the cultural aspects of the majority. Okay? So in dealing with culture, of course, we also have what we call as the social contradictions and tensions. And let me give you some. So we also have we have here inter-ethnic conflict, in which it is an armed conflict between different ethnic groups. No, sa isang bansa karaniwan nagkakaroon ng ganito, no, halimbawa lalo sa Mindanao, no, yung isang tribo, no, nakipag-away sa isang tribo, and that is actually one of social contradiction and tensions. So that's your inter-ethnic conflict. We also have what we call as revolution. It involves a public seizure of the state with the main goal of overturning the existing political structures. Revolutions involve the public and are usually attended by rapid structural changes that usually involve the use of violence. Pero take note class, no, nung EDSA People Power Revolution 1, no, ito ay hinangaan ng buong mundo. Bakit? Kasi nagkaroon ng revolution na kung saan hindi gumamit ng dahas ang mga tao. No? Lumabas sila sa EDSA, nagdasal yung mga madre, nagdasal yung mga pari at iba pang grupo pa, and definitely they were successful in overturning the existing political structure in which ang pagiging diktador ni Ginoong Marcos ay napabagsak ng isang ginang, no, na nawalan ng asawa nang dahil sa politika. Third, we also have what we call as terrorism, and it occurs when non-state actors use violence against civilians to achieve their political goals. No? Sa ating bansa, maraming mga tinatawag na terorista, ilan na rin ito ay yung Abu Sayyaf, no, na kung saan kailangan nilang bumihag ng iba't ibang tao so that they will be able to achieve their political goals. And in that sense, that is actually terrorism. At kaya pinupuntirya ito ng iba't ibang mga gobyerno ng iba't ibang bansa. Pero take note class, na ang terorismo hindi lang ito ay global issue. Hindi lamang ito natatagpuan sa Pilipinas. Kahit yung iba't ibang bansa, meron din sila nito. No, may problemang ganito. Fourth, we also have gender issue. So it is a source of social contradictions and tensions, and the issue on gender equality has been a subject on the social discussions for quite some time up to the present. And gender equality refers to the view that all genders, excuse me, that includes men and women, should receive equal treatment. But not only men and women or the straight ones, okay? This would already include the LGBTQIA+. So therefore, these groups, no, regardless of your gender, regardless of your gender identity, gender orientation, and expression, there should be no discrimination based on gender. Okay? All right. And that's it for our discussion, our last discussion for your UCSP. And let me grab this opportunity to thank everyone for attending our sessions for the whole semester. And I hope that you will actually be successful in your academic endeavors. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you when I see you.